Hey everyone, my name is Aaron Freeman. I'm a student at NC State University and I'm currently enrolled in the MAT program for elementary education. I want to take a minute to introduce you to a book I recently read called The Pyramid Response to Intervention by Austin Buffman, Mike Matos, and Chris Webber. First, I'd like to talk about the central premise of the book itself. Pyramid Response to Intervention uses compelling stories to illustrate how RTI is most effective when built on the professional learning communities at work process. The book demonstrates how to create 3 tiers of interventions from the basic to the intensive that will address student learning gaps. It also helps you to understand what a successful program should look like, and it will give you many forms you can reproduce and activities that will help your team understand how to make RTI work in your school. The main purpose of RTI is to shift the burden of educating students who struggle to learn from special education professionals to the entire collective of the professional learning community, or PLC. There was a lot of great material throughout this book, but the four main concepts I'll focus on are the RTI models, laying the foundation, learning CPR, and the 3-tier system. I'll start with the two RTI models discussed in the book. You have the protocol system and the problem-solving system. While these two approaches to RTI are sometimes described as being very different from each other, they have several common elements. So in practice, many schools and districts combine or blend aspects of the two approaches to fit their needs. With the protocol system, students qualify for existing intervention programs according to a pre-established criteria and the nature of the deficiency they have. With this intervention, specialists train teachers how to handle a deficiency one way instead of adjusting it for the specific need of a particular student. Now with the problem-solving system, it utilizes staff members' input to identify highly individualized student plans. Because team members can consider more learning options, they can prescribe a more specific learning plan for each student and select students on less strict cut points than in the protocol model. This will allow you more flexibility to diagnose students that are right at or just above the cut point. Most believe that a blended method using the best of both systems is the best way to go, and honestly, after reading the book, I personally like that approach. Now, when it comes to laying the foundation, the book talks about reculturing your school and accessing your current reality, because implementing RTI is a school-wide, systematic, collaborative process in which all school resources are seamlessly integrated and focus on the same outcome to ensure that every student learns at high levels. This means sometimes schools have to dissolve the culture and structural barriers between regular education and special education to create a collective response in which core instruction and supplemental support form a learning continuum to meet the individual needs of every student. Now, once this new culture is in place, the book talks about the importance of accessing your current reality, because no matter how good your supportive program or PRTI is, if your core program is not where it needs to be, you'll never be successful. You must first strive to teach things right the first time. This concept really spoke to me because if you can teach students properly the first time, it will help eliminate some of your borderline students so you can focus more on those students who are really struggling. Now, in chapter 5 of the book, it was entitled Learning CPR. This really stuck out to me because as the chapter talked about appropriate response versus traditional responses to learning emergencies, the book talked about how educational crisis needs to be handled like a medical crisis. The appropriate response should be urgent, directive, timely, targeted, administered by trained professionals, and systematic. If educators are prepared for an educational emergency, much like we are for a medical emergency, then we can recognize issues early on and go after them with the same precision to have a positive outcome. Um, It goes on to talk about how the characteristics of an effective intervention program are rarely part of the traditional way of handling educational crisis. Traditional responses usually include individual teacher response, remedial classes, summer school, retention, alternative and special education, or just doing nothing at all. And none of this is acceptable in a crisis. So the heart of the PRTI model lies in the use of a 3-tiered instruction. In the RTI framework, The instruction delivered to students varies on several dimensions that are related to the nature and severity of the student's difficulties. The three-tier system consists of Tier 1, which is the core program. The book talks about a powerful classroom instruction, begins with the adoption and use of an evidence-based curriculum, but effective teachers do not simply teach such a program page by page in the same way for all students. Rather, they differentiate instruction, providing instruction designed to meet the specific needs of students in the class. The book stresses again that this is the base of the pyramid, so it needs to be strong to be built upon. Next is Tier 2, which is the supplemental level. In Tier 2, students not making adequate progress in the core curriculum are provided with increasingly intensive instruction matched to their needs on the basis of levels of performance and rates of progress. Now, the last tier is Tier 3, which is the intensive level. At this level, students receive individualized, intensive interventions that target the student's skill deficiencies for the remediation of existing problems and the prevention of more severe problems. Using this three-tier system, educators can collaborate to make sure every student is receiving the best education that the school can provide by meeting each student's needs. Just to kind of wrap things up, I'll mention real quick 2 teaching ideas I plan to take with me from this book. One is the concept of power standards. In a perfect world, we would have enough time for all students to master all standards the state requires in the short time it requires it. But that's not the reality we live in. So by coming up with power standards as a group, we can focus on students mastering what we feel is the most beneficial to all students. The other idea that I really like, especially as a new teacher, and I believe that will benefit me most, is the idea of collaborative culture, because no teacher can possibly possess all of the knowledge, skills, time, and resources needed to ensure high levels of learning for all students. So as educators, we need to come together and share experiences or fresh ideas to make sure we can ensure high levels of learning for all students as a team. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me today. Share this book, and I hope you learned a little and you'll want to go out and read it for yourself. I'll leave you with this quote I found by Napoleon Hill. Do not wait, the time will never be just right. Start where you stand and work with whatever tools you may have at your command, and better tools will be found as you go along. Thank you.